You are not difficult to love. You are difficult to find. There is a difference, and Nietzsche spent his entire life living inside that difference. You have been in rooms full of people and felt completely invisible. Not because you were boring, not because you were awkward, but because you were operating on a frequency nobody else in the room could hear. You have had conversations that went nowhere, not because you had nothing to say, but because what you wanted to say required a depth the conversation was never going to reach. And at some point, you stopped trying. You learned to perform a lighter version of yourself, to laugh at things that didn't interest you, to agree with things you didn't believe, to stay quiet about the things that mattered most, because staying quiet was easier than watching people's eyes glaze over the moment you went somewhere real. That is not a social problem. That is not anxiety. That is not something a therapist fixes by teaching you small talk. Nietzsche had a name for what you are experiencing, and he said something about it that nobody who studies him ever talks about. Because it would change everything about how you understand your solitude. Before I show you what Nietzsche saw, I want to give you something practical, because understanding why you are alone without knowing what to do about it is just more weight to carry. Nietzsche left 3 ideas inside his writing that most people never find. Not hidden, just buried under the philosophy that everyone quotes and nobody applies. The first practice, the frequency filter. The next time you are in a conversation that feels shallow, do not perform. Do not pretend interest you don't have. Do not rescue the conversation with questions you don't care about. Just be honest. Say one true thing. Something you actually think. Something slightly deeper than the conversation was going. Then watch what happens. One of 2 things will occur. The person will rise to meet you, and you will have found someone, or they will retreat, and you will have saved yourself hours of performing for an audience that was never your audience. The frequency filter does not find you friends. It finds you the right ones, and it stops wasting your energy on connections that were never real. The second practice, the solitude reframe. The next time you are alone and the aloneness feels like failure, ask yourself one question. Am I alone, or am I selective? Because there is a version of aloneness that is rejection, and there is a version that is discernment. Nietzsche called solitude not the absence of connection, but the presence of self. The person who cannot be alone is not someone who loves people. They are someone who cannot face themselves. The person who chooses solitude is someone who has learned that their own company is not something to escape from. 5 minutes of asking that question honestly will change the way your aloneness feels. Not instantly, but permanently. The third practice, the one-person rule. Stop trying to be understood by everyone. Find one person, just one, who operates on your frequency. Not someone who agrees with everything you say. Someone who pushes back with the same depth you bring. Someone whose disagreement is more interesting than most people's agreement. Nietzsche believed that one real connection was worth more than 1,000 performed ones. Not because depth is rare, because most people never go looking for it. They settle for the connections that require the least of them. You have never been able to do that. That is not your weakness. That is your standard. Try these today, then come back. Because what Nietzsche actually said about why this happens is darker and more liberating than anything I've told you yet. Nietzsche didn't just describe why intelligent people end up alone. He said it was inevitable, not a mistake, not a wound to heal. Inevitable. And the reason why is the most uncomfortable thing he ever wrote. Nietzsche believed human beings exist on a spectrum of consciousness, not intelligence in the academic sense, not IQ, not credentials, something more precise, the capacity to see through the performance of social life, the agreed-upon fictions that hold groups together, the comfortable lies that make ordinary life bearable. Most people, Nietzsche said, do not want to see through these things. They want the comfort of the herd, the safety of shared belief, the warmth of collective agreement. And the herd is not stupid. The herd is efficient. It has solved the problem of survival by creating belonging. Follow the same rules, share the same values, laugh at the same things, fear the same things, and you will never be alone. But there are people who cannot stop seeing, who notice the performance underneath the conversation, who feel the gap between what is being said and what is actually true, who cannot pretend that the shallow thing is deep or that the comfortable lie is enough. Nietzsche called these people the higher types, not superior, not better, just different in a way that makes the herd uncomfortable, because the person who sees through the performance is a threat to it, not intentionally, just by existing, just by the quality of their attention, just by asking the question that everyone in the room agreed not to ask. And the herd responds the way herds always respond to what they don't understand, with distance, with suspicion, with the specific social punishment of exclusion, not violent, not cruel, just quiet, the conversations that don't go deep, the invitations that stop coming, the sense of being tolerated rather than wanted. Nietzsche said this was not personal, it was structural. The higher type does not end up alone because something is wrong with them. They end up alone because the very thing that makes them who they are makes them incompatible with what the herd requires. Now think about your own life, the friendships that felt effortless and then quietly disappeared, the relationships where you gave everything and received a fraction back, the groups you joined hoping to finally belong and left feeling more alone than before you arrived. That was not failure, that was incompatibility. And Nietzsche said the sooner you understand the difference, the sooner you stop trying to fix the unfixable and start building what is actually possible. But here is where it gets complicated, because Nietzsche did not just describe the higher type's solitude. He described what happens when the higher type tries to escape it. And what he said is the most important thing you will hear today. The danger of descending. Nietzsche watched higher types do something predictable. Unable to bear the solitude, they descended. They made themselves smaller. They performed the herd's values. They laughed at what the herd laughed at. They agreed with what the herd agreed with. They traded their frequency for the warmth of belonging. And for a while, it worked. The invitations came back. The conversations felt easier. The aloneness lifted. But something else happened too. Something slower. Something they didn't notice until it was already done. They lost themselves. Not dramatically, not all at once, but piece by piece. The opinion they didn't share. The truth they softened. The question they swallowed. The version of themselves they left outside the room every time they walked in. Nietzsche called this the greatest self-betrayal available to a human being. Not failure, not weakness, betrayal. Because you knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway. Because the solitude was too heavy and the belonging felt too good. But Nietzsche didn't leave you in the betrayal. He left you something else. Something he called the only honest response to the higher type's condition. And it is not what you expect. Most people hear Nietzsche's higher type theory and think, I just need to find my people. I just need the right circle. I just need one person who gets it. And they are not wrong. But Nietzsche said something harder. He said the higher type must first make peace with the possibility that the people may never come. Not as despair, as preparation. Because the higher type who needs connection to function is at the mercy of whoever shows up. They will descend for the wrong person. They will perform for an audience that does not deserve the performance. They will mistake relief for resonance and end up more alone than when they started. The strength of a person is measured by how much solitude they can endure. Nietzsche didn't mean that connection is weakness. He meant that the person who cannot be alone cannot truly connect, because they are not connecting from fullness. They are connecting from hunger. And hunger makes you accept whatever is put in front of you. The higher type must learn to live from the inside out, to build a life that does not require the validation of the herd to feel real. Not because connection is impossible, but because connection found from a place of wholeness is completely different from connection found from a place of desperation. One is a gift you give, the other is a transaction you make. And Nietzsche said, the higher type who learns to live from solitude rather than against it becomes something rare, someone whose presence is a choice, not a need. And this is where Nietzsche stopped describing the problem and started describing what becomes possible on the other side of it. What he called the higher type's gift, not to themselves, to everyone who finally finds them. Jung understood a version of this. He called it individuation, the process of becoming fully and completely yourself, rather than the version the collective demands. He said most people never complete this process, not because they are incapable, because it requires a willingness to be alone with yourself long enough to find out who you actually are. Most people fill that silence before the answer comes. The Stoics touched the same truth from a different angle. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." He was not talking about honesty with others. He was talking about honesty with yourself. The self-respect of the person who does not descend, who does not perform, who does not trade their frequency for the comfort of belonging. And Schopenhauer said something that connects everything. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. And if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. 3 philosophers, 3 centuries, 3 different languages, all pointing at the same person. The one sitting alone in a room full of people, not broken, not failed, just ahead of the room, waiting for the room to catch up, or waiting for the courage to stop waiting. Because Nietzsche's final word on the higher type's solitude was not about finding connection. It was about what you build inside the solitude and what that building makes possible. This is what happens when you stop fighting your solitude and start inhabiting it. Not productivity, not achievement, not the hustle version of a life finally unlocked. Something quieter, something most people never access because they never sit still long enough to find it. Depth, the specific quality of a person who has spent real time with themselves, who knows what they think before the room tells them, who knows what they value before the group decides, who knows who they are independently of who the crowd needs them to be. Nietzsche called this the foundation of the higher type's power. Not dominance, not superiority, the power of self-possession, the power of the person who does not need the room's approval to feel real. And paradoxically, this is the quality that finally attracts the right people. Not because you performed it, because you stop performing entirely, and the person who finds you in that state finds something rare, someone who is actually there, not a version, not a performance, just the person, whole and present and completely themselves. Now go back to that room, the one where you felt invisible, the one where the conversation never went where you needed it to go. Now you know what that room was. That was not rejection. That was incompatibility. That was Nietzsche's herd doing what herds do, protecting its frequency from one it couldn't understand. And you, doing what higher types do, feeling the gap and not knowing yet that the gap was not a wound. It was a doorway to the solitude that builds, to the depth that compounds, to the version of yourself that exists only in the silence the herd never enters. Nietzsche never promised you a crowd. He was honest enough not to lie about that. But he promised something rarer, a self, fully formed, fully yours, built in the solitude that everyone else was too afraid to sit in. And a self like that, when it finally meets another self like that, does not need to perform, does not need to descend, does not need to be anything other than exactly what it already is. That is not loneliness. That is the only real connection Nietzsche ever believed in. You were never too much. You were just in the wrong room. And the right room is built, not found. Drop one word in the comments. Just one word for how your solitude feels right now, after everything you just heard. Not an explanation, just the word. Because naming it is the first step toward owning it.